All right, guys, thank you very much for clicking on this channel, this video. We are going to be looking at The Gorge. This is my film review. I just watched it not too long ago. And I have a few thoughts. But before we do, let's go ahead and look at the trailer together because some of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. And I want you guys to be caught up. And if I'm letting you know right now, if you haven't seen it, there will be spoiler talk. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in.
The Gorge trailer starts now.
She has a very unique face.
I have new orders that require me to go dark for at least a year, maybe more. A special assignment in an undisclosed location.
I mean, the production's great.
As an elite sniper, are you presently under any private or military contract?
No, there's not a lot of reasons for me right now.
What if I gave you a reason?
There she is. West Tower Observation Post. Your home for the next 365 days. There is no outside communication here.
What's that on the other side?
That is East Tower. Contact with the other side is strictly forbidden.
So what's the mission? To keep people from going in the gorge?
No. You need to stop what's in the gorge from coming out.
What the hell is that?
The gorge is the door to hell.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people were thinking. Like, oh man, like this is the gateway to hell. Spoiler talk coming up shortly. Yeah. I mean, like I said, the production was good. They did a good job of cutting the trailer.
What's the truth about this place?
Because I will
What's the
honestly
truth
tell
about the
you,
gorge?
it's not what you think. But yet, it is. And you see how long it is taking to get to this part of the trailer? I mean, yeah. Right. And here's the thing, like they tell you the whole movie, but they don't. The Gorge. And it came out on the 14th. Yeah. So, my thoughts on it. My initial thoughts. I went in with a certain level of expectation. I can't remember what I gave it before. I want to say I gave it like a 3. And I want to say that it remained a 3 even after watching it. I'm gonna tell you up front, it's long in the tooth. This is a 2-hour stint where you got to sit down and you're thinking to yourself, like, we're going to get to the action right away. No, you don't. The action doesn't happen until like an hour later. You hear me, folks? An hour later. Like, they took a whole hour to set this film up to where, you know, the stakes, I think they could have been established early on in the film. And, you know, we got it. You know, it's like we got the introduction of, you know, protagonist 1, protagonist 2. We understand that, you know, they're both being called in to guard a gorge, and people are like, you know, well, what's in the gorge? Like that's the first half of the movie. It's like, you know, what's in the gorge, and you see these two people on opposite ends of the gorge, and we don't see any action. Like I said, we don't see no action until like an hour later. So what are they doing? It's this long meet cute. Like, oh my gosh, like why is it taking so long for us to establish the fact that they may have a shared interest in each other. Like you could like they could have wrapped up a lot of this visual exposition within in 25% of the time, instead of like drawing out these long ideas of them, having a sharing a drink or sharing a conversation across the gorge. How are they doing this? They're using their high end tech binoculars to look at each other, and then also the world building around this too. Like you kind of thinking to yourselves, like, well, how often do these creatures come up out of the gorge? And why so random? And why not? I don't know. It's like they didn't pay attention to the world building rules, you know? Kind of like, well, they only come up at night. They would lead you to believe that, but then you ask the question, well, when do they sleep? Because you see them up during the day. And how many of these creatures are down there? Well, spoiler alert, the creatures are people who once occupied the space down in the gorge where they were experimenting on some type of toxin. A toxin got loose and it affected the people down there, the scientists and whoever else was down there. Um, I believe it was a community that had to have been down in the gorge because, um, spoiler talk, when they wind up going into the gorge and they're discovering, like, that, hey, like this was a small town. You got a church in there. They didn't show a school, but you would only assume that if you had a church, that there was some sense of community, families, and all. And there was, I want to say, a diner perhaps, and I mean, like, it was, and everything seemed spread out. It did not. It didn't feel like a community. It felt like it was like a haunted house land, like land where they planted a haunted house, and it were just different sets. Like, we're going to put a school here, but there was no real street or a rhyme to reason as that being a school, or we're going to stick a hospital here. Look over there, you're going to see a church. Look over here, you're going to see homes or whatever. It just didn't make sound sense. It was like you're moving through this foggy area, and all of a sudden there appears like a building structure, or the next scene. Um, they had these people that were affected. They stayed in the gorge, and they were being watched, experimented on to a degree, and contained. So they weren't being eliminated; they were being contained. And this was by way of a organization, I guess you could say a shadow government that was leading the charge, and that was the reason why they would hire two snipers on each side, two gunmen or gunwomen on each side to be able to say, "Hey, we're going to make sure that we contain this situation." So it took too long to get there. The creatures it was a little lackluster in my opinion. Like they look like they were like roots, like trolls, like the toxin caused their bodies to pull in elements of their surroundings. So it was like a lot of woods down there. So they had creatures that were down there that were affected as well, bugs, insects. Like it was a cool idea, but took too long to get there. They literally could have cut out 30 minutes of exposition between the two characters and got straight into the action. And even with them getting into the action, them being hunted, like it turned up, So it was like I would say that's the film's only flaw. It was definitely a popcorn film, something to not necessarily take seriously, but they try to play it like it was like, oh yeah, like the stakes are high. But again, you just ask these questions. Well, what are the rules that are happening here? Because from what I can see, these creatures should be able to come up whenever they want to because they do it. It's like there's a part where they're trying to escape the gorge and they're going up the side of the gorge using their jeep attached to a cord, and the torque is pulling, and the jeep is going up the side. But while they're going up, these creatures are climbing up the side of the gorge, and I'm thinking to myself, well, while they were down there trying to figure out how to get out, or trying to destroy the things in the gorge, what's stopping them from climbing up while they were down and preoccupied? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know who wrote this, but I don't know. Like I feel like if I was an executive over at Apple and this was, put in front of me, the idea and the script, these are the questions that I would ask. And before I could throw money at it, I would be like, this has to be tighter. Like this has to make sense. If this, then that means that that has to happen. And this is what I would ask them. I'm like, like this is a good concept. This is a great, third or fifth draft of the film. But let's just stop and let's look at what we got and let's ask ourselves the questions before we move any further. How does this work? Where uh, you guys get what I'm saying? Like I'm really kind of baffled here. Really kind of baffled. So I would give this movie a 2.53 maybe. Like I feel like the story wise, the story was the story wasn't strong enough. I would give the story a 1. No, I would give the story like a 1.5, possibly a 2. I would give it a 2. I would give it a 2. It had a great concept. The concept was strong, but they didn't execute it correctly. Like the storyline wasn't properly, thoroughly thought out. And yes, I don't know, man. I don't know. So with that being said, you can tell I'm just like conflicted. I recommend the movie as something to put on in the background. Um, Definitely, it's not worth going to the theater. If this was going to be released in the theater, I would have left the theater upset. Upset. You hear me? Like I would have been like 2 hours. You mean to tell me a whole hour went by before we even got to the action? We're sitting here watching people, you know, interact between a gorge and there's really no threat that's happening. Or even after we see the first threat, you should be up on 10 on high alert the whole time from that point on. But they just don't address those concerns or issues. They just kind of just say and we move on to the next thing. So um I would love to see Ryan George. If you're not familiar with who he is, go just YouTube Ryan George and then watch his pitch meetings. Absolutely brilliant. He punches holes in movies that you think are just air seal tight, but this is an easy one. Like this is low hanging fruit, and I would love to see him do a reaction to this film. So that being said, thank you guys very much for watching this video and sticking it out with me for this raw reaction, this raw review of The Gorge. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, and we can make that happen together. Remember to always put forth your best. And like I always say, guys, peace in and confusion. We out.